welcome. Thank you for joining us for today's LCMS Youth Ministry webinar called Bringing Home the Gathering. My name is Amy Gray. I'm the Media Director for the Youth Gathering, and I'm excited to introduce to you today two great guests. Mark Cook and Leah Abel are with us. Mark is currently serving as a DCE at Trinity Lutheran in Rochester, Minnesota. This will be his 5th gathering, and he's brought a group to the gathering as an adult leader 3 times. Mark also serves as a gathering planner and has for the past couple of gatherings. And then Leah Abel, who is also DCE and serves at Our Father Lutheran in Centennial, Colorado. This is also Leah's 5th gathering, and she's brought a group or been connected to a group for 4 times. So we've asked Mark and Leah to come in to share with you guys some tips and advice how to bring the gathering home, how to make it a part of your ongoing ministry, that it's more than just a 5-day event. And they have a lot of great insight, both being an adult leader as well as a gathering planner, on how to connect those dots and make that happen. So we're so excited they're here with us. I'm going to open this up in prayer, and then we'll get ready to go. Heavenly Father, I thank you for today. I thank you for the gift of technology and the ability to meet in this way. Thank you for Mark and Leah and the ways in which they serve and care for youth, both locally as well as on a broader scale through the gathering. Would you bless their time now, bless their words, and may it be beneficial to us as we prepare to bring youth to the gathering and invest in ongoing youth ministry in our congregations. We pray this in your name, Jesus. Amen. All right, take it over, Mark.
Thank you, Amy. Just so everyone knows here, if you have any questions along the way, you can post them on the left side of your screen. There's a chat box there. And there's some people in the youth ministry office that will, if they can, answer them along the way. If there's some bigger questions, we can address those toward the end of the webinar. So feel free to just type in as we're going along if you have any questions that you'd like to ask us. For our presentation here, we're going to kind of go through a couple things, all centered around bringing the gathering home. We'll start with before you go. Some specific things for while you're there, and once you get back, and then give you some practical tips at the end, some things you can use with your group and your congregation. So starting out here, the whole thing is, how do we make this more than a 5-day experience? How do we make the gathering more than just that week we're about to be down in New Orleans together? Because if it's just that, we haven't accomplished a bigger picture of what's going on. The things we learn there, the things we experience there, need to continue on, and so we want to give you some tools for how to do that with your group. So before the gathering, here are some of my suggestions for you. Some ways I think you can before the gathering even happens, promote some of the community building, promote some of the things with your congregation, your families, that will tie in through the gathering and afterwards. One thing we like to do is use fundraisers that connect people to our group. We have one fundraiser we do that our members, they'll ask me about every month, when is the next time we're doing this? We do it with Pizza Ranch in Minnesota, and our members love coming down there and supporting our youth group. I have little old ladies ask me, when's the next Pizza Ranch? When's the next Pizza Ranch? And it gives them a chance to connect with our youth. So if you have fundraisers that are ongoing ones that you can use to connect congregation to your youth, those are gold. The kids see those members showing up again and again to support them, and it starts creating some of those bonds. I would encourage you before the gathering to check out the pre-gathering Bible studies. If you go on the gathering website, then click on the tab that says Lead and Bible Study Resources. There's a handful of resources already up there, a thematic study on Philippians. There's intros to the sub-themes that Leah is going to talk about. There's a Bible study on voodoo and Christianity and New Orleans, and Christian character, study of identity, humility, and community. Those are already posted up on the website. I know there'll be more in the future. Those are great resources to use with your group for leading up to the gathering, starting some of that base knowledge of Philippians and the themes that they're going to see coming into the gathering. The sub-point of that, make sure to include everyone. With our youth group, we have a lot of them that are coming, but there's some who are not able to attend for whatever reason this summer. But all of these events leading up to, make sure to include them as well. We try to do some events that are specific, even our fundraisers, for the gathering. I'll have kids that say, well, I'm not going to the gathering, so I don't need to, like, why should I help out with the fundraiser? Why do I need to be part of this fundraiser? And I always answer them telling them, no, we still want you a part of our fundraising. We still want you a part of all our activities because you're part of this group. Whether or not you're going to the gathering with us, you're still part of our community. You're still part of our group. In our church, our kids started this last year. I'm at Trinity Lutheran, and our youth group, our mission trip last summer started the phrase TrinFam, TRINFAM, and the concept that we're a family. The youth that we have with us, the adults we have with us, is all part of a family, and so that's kind of our mantra with everything we do is TrinFam. Even though you're not coming on our actual trip, or whether you are, we want you part of our fundraising. We want you part of this last weekend we did a rock climbing event. Even if you're not going, we still want you part of that because you're part of our TrinFam. So as much as you can emphasize that and stress that to those who are coming and those who are not, that will get them being a part of what's going on, even if they are not able to be there with us in New Orleans this summer. And that's kind of my next one, pre-gathering activities. I just mentioned our rock climbing event. Do something that's specific to your group that's going. Some type of community building event, some type of event where the kids can get together and get excited for what's going to be going on down in New Orleans. I like to do something that is especially team-oriented, such as the rock climbing we did, where they're encouraging each other, they're relying on each other, teamwork. If you can do low ropes or high ropes courses with them, those are fantastic things to do before you get to the gathering to help with some of that group bonding, that group forming, even before you get to the gathering. And the last thing I have on my list here for pre-gathering stuff is commissioning. It's important to raise up these kids in front of the church and your adult leaders as well. We do a specific commissioning service for our kids the week before we go to the gathering. And it's a chance, again, after our fundraisers, after our events before the gathering, to one last time bring them in front of the congregation, have the congregation pray for them, have our pastors lift them up in prayer, and acknowledge these kids that are going on this trip and the experience that they're going to have. So those are all important things I like to do before the gathering to just promote community in our group and get them ready for showing up at the gathering. This next section here, we're going to talk about some stuff during the gathering. And Leah Abel is part of the mass events team with the gathering planning. So she works very integrally with the sub-themes that you'll see at the gathering, and she's going to talk to you a little bit about some of those and how you can utilize those while you're at the gathering. So I'll turn this over to Leah.
Thank you, Mark. I hope everybody can hear me okay. As Mark mentioned, I do get to work with the mass events, the dome events for the gathering, which is really fun because it means that I spend a lot of time thinking about what we're communicating to kids and to leaders and what and how they're going to have a conversation. It might be interesting for you to know that one of the things that we as a team spend the most time thinking about is a lot of what's going to happen during the actual mass events, but more important for us, what drives us is what conversation will group leaders and students have when they walk out the door, when they leave that event that night. A lot of times we start actually as we get in the process of our brainstorming with the thought of what is the sending question? What's the conversation that's going to happen? And Mark did such a great job of setting us up for how you build a group that can have conversation that's significant as they get to trust each other and care about each other and all those things leading up to the gathering. And wow, Mark, you did just an awesome job as you talked about how do we connect our whole congregation and students not going to this whole process, which is awesome. So when you get to the gathering, for me as a youth leader who's taken groups in the past, I think there is no more important thing that happens with a gathering than the conversations that we have. You sit through a mass event or you sit through an interest center and you get all this information. Kids hear things, you hear things, but that time that you spend talking after is key. So my first point on there was do not skip community group processing time. So by the end of the first day, if you flew in that morning or whatever, you're exhausted, you're tired, kids want to go to the dances or whatever's going on for a Mass Event Plus that night, I just really want to encourage you, don't miss the opportunity, don't miss the door that's open to you to have some conversation. You'll find some of the resources that we have that we put together as a larger planning team for you. It's Bible study group, et cetera, to make sure you've got good conversation starters. So spend some time, even if the only conversation that you make time for is as you're, doing your room checks or whatever at night, and you have a little conversation to say, what was the most significant thing for you tonight? Please take advantage of those family group conversations. If it's possible for your group, I would say try to do them in the evening while it's a little fresher. Morning sometimes seems like a good idea, but I don't know about your teenagers. Mine don't all love the morning. So morning can be done as well, but please don't skip those. And second, I want you to think about as far as having those significant conversations with kids and with your group is this. As you leave Bible study in the morning or mass events in the evening, really try to force yourself as a leader and with the students to talk not about what you liked, but what you learned. Leaders, it's just huge that you're aware of the fact that if you walk out of a mass event or an interest center or whatever, and you start criticizing the things you didn't like about it, like, oh man, I didn't like it when that speaker said X, Y, Z, or I wish they had done this instead, please be aware that that is what the kids are going to take with them. And so I want to push you as a leader to really focus on the things that you're hearing and learning when you talk to kids and be positive, even if there's something that you don't connect with. And also, as you have conversations with students, it might start with, what did you like about that speaker, or what did you like about the mass event tonight? But could you please push that conversation towards what did you learn? And what did you learn is huge. More than what did I like, but what did I learn? So I really want to encourage you in that. Number 3 on there, what you get to do at the gathering that you don't have the opportunity to do necessarily at home, at Sunday school or youth group activities, is you spend that longer time together. You really build bonds with a group, and you get to start to set the tone, not for kind of that initial conversation, but for what a real conversation looks like. And so the kind of things that you talk about, if you do the processing after some of those significant moments of mass events or Bible study or interest centers, if you do those things and you talk about what are you learning, what does God's Word show us there, what are the speakers pointing us to in the truth, you get to set that tone for real conversations. Because when you go home in 5 or 6 or 7 days, the hope is to have real conversations with kids, honest conversations. Don't settle for their fake answer that they give and hope that you'll be done, but moving towards those real conversations. And that brings me to my 4th kind of bullet on there that I want you to think about. Depending on your group, especially if you're bringing a group of students of 10 students, it's sometimes hard to think about, could we divide when we do our family group discussions? Don't skip those if you didn't get that already. Could we divide into family groups of our 4 or 5 students, or should we stay all together? I would really encourage you, if at all possible, leaders, to have your evening processing time or morning, depending on what works for your group, to have those in small groups, to really utilize the family group adult leaders so that the conversations that are had can become more and more intimate and more significant. And I also have in there this idea of along the way conversations. You will have the great opportunity to walk a lot in New Orleans. And what that means when you're walking to the Dome or you're walking to Mother's to get a sandwich or whatever you're doing, you have a chance to ask kids questions. And it's easy to be like, oh, hey, how you doing in those conversations? But if you want to set the tone for better conversations, for deeper connectedness, I really want to encourage you to have with students, and maybe it's, every time you're on a walk, you think, like, all right, Jesus, who am I going to talk to this time? Find an along-the-way conversation with the student and just say, hey, like, what are you getting out of this? What do you think? Who did you hear today that really kind of spoke to where you're at? What are you thinking? How are you feeling? Have those conversations as you're along the way, because it really is, and you're going to hear Mark and I both say this multiple times, it really is the relationships that you build with the students and the ways that you have quality content to really digest together. Those relationships are what you're going to bring home to really extend this experience and to really make it a way of life for your ministry and your group, not just it was a really neat thing that we did once. So please think about that, both having smaller group conversations and those kind of one-on-one along the way. The last one in there, I think I sound like a broken record, but I'm okay with that. Group processing time. Those are so key. Don't miss out on that. And so the next thing that I would like to do is I have a little inside scoop with working with mass events on kind of what some of the things we're going to talk about, what the sub-themes will look like. So especially if you're thinking about evening small group time or family group time, let me give you just a few thoughts. If you have a notebook handy or a piece of paper, maybe just a few things to jot down for you to start thinking about how can I prepare for some of those evening conversations, those family group conversations now, okay? And so let's look at those themes a little bit. So the first night of the gathering is Saturday night. I think you got that right. And it's our opening event. We don't really have a sub-theme for that night. We're just focusing on this big idea of what does it mean to be in Christ alone, which is pretty awesome. For those of you who've been to gatherings before, whether it was as a participant or as a leader, one of the things that you probably remember is that night one is like excitement, it's joy. The kids are a little crazy, a little unfocused, but they're excited. And it's an energy and excitement in the room. Soak that up, enjoy that. And then know that as far as kind of where we're going, two things I want you to consider in your conversations after. One is this. You're going to hear us take students towards this idea of what is the difference between true joy and kind of those fleeting happiness things. What does it look like for something to stay, to be our joy, to stick with us, versus those things that kind of are fleeting, whether it's a popularity or a new car or those kind of things. So hear us talk about that. So be ready for that conversation. Think about what some of those things look like for your students. Also, just think about this. The students who have never been to a gathering before are going to probably have like a wow moment. And some of your students, well, not all of them, but some of your students who've been before will say this: oh, it's really good, but it wasn't as good as last time. And those of you who've been on mission trips, those of you who've been in gatherings, a lot of times there's a feeling of, I have this memory that was so awesome from the first time around that I don't have that exact same feeling this time around. Just tell them to stick with it. Just encourage them in that, not because it's not as good, because I'm here to tell you it's going to be an awesome gathering, but because that's just a common thing. I've heard that every time I've taken a group, every time I've taken students on mission trips, their first mission trip, you can't ever quite replicate that sense of what they experience. So be ready for that conversation with students, and again, think about how they can grow from that, how they can learn from that, and don't let them get negative. Okay, if you can start moving them towards that. And then also just for your first night, be aware that it's a lot to take in. So you may not, I won't even say may not, you probably won't have your deepest, most intimate family group conversation that night. So just be aware of that. Maybe, but it's doubtful. So just kind of know that, kind of have that in the back of your head. So that's night one. So be thinking about true joy versus happiness. Day two, the whole gathering is going to be looking at our sub-theme of identity. And mass events, of course, the team that I work on will be a good part of that. I think, as I think about my own students from my congregation who will be attending, as I've thought about them and prayed for them, I really think that this identity night is going to be huge. I really think that it's a place where we're going to talk to kids where they are, which is that question of who am I really? Throughout the night, throughout the mass events, we are going to have the opportunity to kind of see and hear and experience a little bit of the Paul story the Apostle Paul, who, of course, wrote Philippians down for us, the Word of God written through Paul. And so one of the things that they're going to hear and get to kind of wrestle with on that second night, on the identity night, is that compared to Christ, all the other things that we often try to let define us, compared to Christ, those things are rubbish. And we're going to have kids doing some interaction that night, asking them to do a little reflection and sharing some kind of a moment, I think, that night. So potential and identity night for them to be wrestling with some things, wrestling with what is it that they are making the main thing. And so be ready for that conversation. Oftentimes, for those of you who maybe have attended a gathering before, we'll find ourselves having those kind of like, what's going on with me, what's my issue, what's my thing, kind of that third night. And this time it's the second night. And so for some kids, they may not quite be ready to talk about it, but I can just about guarantee they're going to be thinking through that. So be ready for that. Again, those are the conversations. That next morning when you're walking to Bible study at the Dome, maybe you say to them, hey, so what was it? As you saw it last night, heard the speaker and did some of the reflection, what was it that you felt like was the thing that you want to make to define you aside from Christ alone? So start thinking about those conversations. So that's identity, our next night. Our next event, wow, that slide is long. Sorry about that, guys. I'm just realizing that. The next event, the third night, will be humility. All day long, we'll spend time talking about that. Here's what I love about our humility event. I think what we have on that night and what you may experience as a group, as a ministry, is an opportunity to say, what does it mean in everyday life, in big ways and in small ways, to consider others better than ourselves? What does it mean to live humility? I mean, true humility, great humility has really been shown in Jesus Christ alone. Humility in some ways is a person, not an attitude. And yet we now have this opportunity because of what Christ has done for us to live out humility. So a couple of things that you're going to see us kind of play with that night is this idea that we have a sermon event or a mission trip or something along those lines. A lot of times our kids are so pumped, take a picture of them holding a shovel and post it on Instagram. Now, why? For one, because they like to take pictures and share what they're doing. Two, because I think we struggle sometimes with kind of wanting or needing credit for the good that we've done, the ways that we've served Christ. We'll play with that idea a little bit. Again, not saying it's not okay to post things on Instagram and not that it's bad to feel good about our service, but you'll see us struggle with that a little bit on our Monday evening, if I want to get my nights correct. And so this will be a great chance, too, I think, that humility night, as far as taking things home, bringing the gathering home with you, consider that night how you might start talking as a youth group, as a family group, about what could we do in our community, big, small, etc., to serve Christ. And you're going to see some examples, some ideas that are going to happen during the service of ways to serve, of ways to show the humility of Christ to the world. And so be a great opportunity for you as you're looking ahead to start the conversation. What might we do in the future to serve, and what might that look like? So that will be humility. And then on Tuesday night, I'll keep correcting myself there. Tuesday night is community night. That's the theme we'll spend a whole day on Tuesday. And then Tuesday evening in the mass event, we're going to celebrate community. We're going to kind of explore just the joy and the wonder of it. What does that mean? We're going to talk about and look at what does the church around the world mean. Excuse me, my toddler just walked into the room. We're going to talk about what that means and what that looks like as we go around the world. We're going to talk about what does it mean to live as a community. And so as we do that, one of the things you'll hear us talk about is how do we practice forgiveness and receive forgiveness in the community. And so that night, we'll really be dealing with those themes a little bit. Again, maybe a great opportunity for you as a group to talk about what do we do to connect with the church at large, and maybe more than that, how are we community with one another? It was a real strategic decision for us as a planning team to say, let's talk about community on night 3. If you've ever taken a group to a gathering before or on a mission trip before, you know that by the end of things, there is oftentimes people have started to annoy each other. We've had a little bit less sleep. There's some kind of drama because somebody broke up with somebody, all those kind of things that happen within youth ministries. You're gonna see some of that happening in your youth group, and the community mass event is going to give you a real, tangible, clear way to talk about that, to kind of deal with that a little bit. And so as you watch things happening within the dynamic of your youth group, that community night mass event really has an opportunity to let you kind of work through some of that and say, how will we be the church together? How do we practice forgiveness with one another when it's hard? And how does being the church as we were meant to be, how does that have the opportunity to change the world, really, as the rest of the world sees Christians and the church as loving and forgiving and gracious rather than judgmental and small-minded. So that's kind of what those evenings will look like. Our closing worship service is going to be our last event this time. Our last mass event will be worship, which is going to be awesome. I mean, what a high kind of point for us to end on. And this, again, if you think about how do we take the 5 days of the gathering and extend that experience, worship is going to be huge. Worship is something, even though it will look very different at the gathering, but it's our commonality as Lutheran Christians, as LCMS kids, and adult leaders. When they go home the next Sunday or the Sunday after that and they stand at the rail and have the body and blood of Jesus Christ and the bread and the wine, if they do that, what we can start to do is help kids connect that kind of wow experience of communion with 25,000 people to the same community, the same sacrament, the thing that binds us in our small congregations, in our medium-sized congregations, or wherever they are, with the community. So what an awesome, awesome way for us to end. And really would encourage you, as you're leaving the gathering, whether you spend a night, that Wednesday night still in town, or if you're headed out already, to really spend time with them saying, how does what we experienced here look like what we experience at home? How does it look that way? And so just an awesome way, if you think about those themes a little bit, a lot of what I've talked to you about for the last few minutes is, here's the themes, here's what they may hear about, actually in those like mass events in particular. But if you want to take that home and extend that experience beyond the 5 days, thinking about those themes now and helping them to have the conversations while they're together is just so huge. After the gathering, as we move on, there's more opportunity for you to think about some of those themes and to build upon those things you're doing. I would really encourage you strongly to think about, within a month or 6 weeks after the gathering, some kind of a service project. I would actually encourage you as an adult leader not to plan for what that will be, but to have that conversation at the gathering with those students to say, what could we do? How might we serve together? And then to follow through, have the conversation, make the plans together. And then as you're thinking about your ministry calendar when you come back, whether it's Sunday morning stuff or Wednesday nights or however your ministry runs, once a month events, that you would think about some kind of a service project to connect back to that theme and to live some of that out. Another thing for you to consider a little bit, if you're making plans for Sunday school classes or your fall youth group kind of Wednesday night stuff, or your monthly events, start thinking about what your next Sunday school or youth group series will be. Lots of options there as you think about that. You could think about, as I talked about night one, this idea of joy versus happiness that they're going to hear about. There might be some great stuff there. Maybe some identity kind of things. Start looking for those pieces. How do I celebrate and be excited about how God has made me, and yet also keep all those things about how God has made me in their proper place. So kind of a challenge, but kind of an exciting challenge as well. And also, I think for me, a huge one, you have a chance to, I guess I want to say, reset a little bit the community of your youth group. And if you think about how you will be together, we as youth leaders, as volunteer and professional youth workers, we spend a ton of time doing community builders. Mark did such a great job talking about how do we build those relationships, build the community before we leave. And what you have this great opportunity to do is have a conversation at the gathering about, what does real community look like, and then try to be that when you get back. I know I mentioned this a couple of times, but I really want you to kind of get this in your brains a little bit. One of the big pieces for us with community is, what does it look like to practice grace and forgiveness and to receive that? You have a chance to kind of reset in conversations as we're together and we start to drive each other crazy as a youth group, or we start to push each other's buttons, or somebody hurt someone's feelings, or we're just, someone's annoying somebody, whatever it might be. How can you start to talk and build language with your kids that says, how are we going to be together? How are we going to love each other? Kind of take that to the next level. So those are some thoughts for you to start to think about how or what you do at the gathering. And again, the conversations you have, that's my mantra, the conversations that you have after the mass events, after Bible study, after those intro centers, how will those start to shape you as a group, shape those relationships so that you can head back home and have more of those kind of intentional conversations. Mark, I'm going to pass it back to you, and he is going to talk to us a little bit about more things to do after the gathering.
So thanks, Leah, for all that info for during and post-gathering. I want to throw out some other practical ideas or suggestions to all of you. Some of these will relate to during the gathering as well as after the gathering. But I thought it was important for you guys to hear a summary of those sub-themes and how those weave in and out of each day. And that will kind of inform you how you can use some of these ideas. Do not use all of them because there's a lot of them. I use a few of these, and I know other DCEs, other youth workers, other volunteers that use others of these. So these are some of my favorites that I wanted to present before you. So take and pick whatever ones you like from the list I have here. This first slide is just in general. Thank your supporters, share your experiences, and share what you learned. If you can do that after the gathering, you're getting somewhere. So for your supporters, your congregation, that can be bulletin, newsletter, website, Facebook, all that stuff. Another great way to do it, especially I know there's some youth groups that have individual people sponsor youth going, or have individual members of the congregation make commitments toward your group, or you have some fundraiser that it's much more an individual giving versus a whole general congregation. It's a fantastic thing to send them thank you notes. You can do that when you get back. Another great way to do it is at the gathering. Bring address labels with you and stamps with you. If you want to be really on top of the game, you can even buy postcards before you go down there and have them ready to go so the kids can just write on them, fill them out. I think Leah's church is actually doing something like that with writing postcards while they're at the gathering. That's a fantastic way to give an individual thank you back to someone in your congregation, to a family member, to anyone. And then the next couple slides to go over sharing your experiences and what you've learned here. I want to start with a small focus with family, and then I'll talk a little larger focus with your youth group, and then an even broader one with the congregation. So how do you bring the gathering back home to your youth's family? An awesome way to do it, which our parents used last time, was live streaming in the mass event. It's really neat for parents to be able to go on their computer and watch the same thing that's going on down in San Antonio last time, New Orleans now, watch the same thing their kids are watching, a much smaller screen, but it's really neat for them to be able to see the same hear the same speakers, see the same things. They can engage much better with their kids instead of when the kids get home say, so what did you do? Stuff. They can ask much more pointed questions about what did you think about this speaker, or I heard this person talk about this. What did you think about that? Or it can tie them much closer to the mass events and things that happen at the gathering if your parents watch the live streaming back home. So advertise that, push that as much as you can, because it's a really neat way for them to connect with their kids who are at the gathering. The other thing that can happen from that is parents, they can text their kids during the mass event or after the mass event if there was something that really spoke to them. Ask their kids about something in the mass event. If you want to give your parents tools for doing that, or prompt them and say, hey, it would be a great idea if after you watch the mass event, text your child and ask them a question about it, just to start a conversation. That's a neat way to start having that conversation back at home, because ultimately we want kids to come back home to their parents and share with them what they learned, what they experienced, how they grew in their faith. And that's a really important conversation that they can have with their parents, with their siblings too. Send pictures to family as things happen. Some kids are going to do this automatically. They're going to send pictures back to their parents or their siblings or friends or whatever. But if you can even stop at certain times and prompt some of your kids who wouldn't necessarily do that, hey, let's take a picture, send that home, text that back to your parents. You can share what's going on as it's happening back with people at home. And that, not just families, I'll talk about that with sharing with your youth group as well, to include other people as well in what's going on as it's happening. It's a great way for us to use our smartphones and some of this technology for engaging family back at home as it's happening. Send postcards home. I gave you a short little spiel about that. The Bible studies and devotions online, those are also great to use at home. It's fantastic for parents to look through those, to use those. It's a great chance for them to understand what's going on at the gathering, the sub-themes, the overall theme of the gathering, again, to connect with their youth at the gathering. So those are some ideas for connecting back with family. Youth groups, the next larger circle here is youth group. Again, live stream. Your kids who are not able to attend, encourage them to watch what's going on at the mass event. They can be involved, although not there. They can see and hear the same speakers that their fellow youth group members are seeing. Bible study as well. Involve the youth before and after the gathering. We'll have post-gathering Bible studies that will be going up on the website. That's a great chance for once you get back to have the other members of the youth group to participate in Bible studies afterwards and be a part of that. Especially if they've seen some of the mass events, now they can participate in some of the Bible studies that will take information from the mass events and go further with it. NYG reunion, we did this last time. A couple weeks after you get back, set a date. You can even set this date on your way back of when you want to get back together. You can share pictures, share memories, a chance for everybody to get back together and just remember some of the experiences and some of the things you learned. It's also a great time to do one of those post-gathering Bible studies or get started on that series of them. Leah mentioned setting up a service project once you get back. That's another great time to say, hey, we talked about this. Let's do this now. Let's organize this and put this together. One of my youth at the last gathering, at the very end of the gathering, fit perfectly. He said, it was great. This was amazing. We talked about lots of stuff. When can we do it? That was a perfect opportunity for us to say, yeah, let's do it. What do you want to do? When can we do that? And setting up a time once you get back to all get back together, reunion type of style, you can make an action plan for those things. Next up, I have your tangible reminders. If you have a youth room, fantastic. Put up a tangible thing, whether it's a poster, whether it's the verse from the gathering that gets painted on the wall, something big that shows the youth group, reminds them of what happened at the gathering, and that it wasn't just this thing we went to last summer, but for the years to come, they will look at that and remember what they learned at the gathering and how that still applies to them today. It's a lasting memory that they can have a visual reminder of back at church. Make an action plan. I started talking about this. What do you want to do differently because of what you learned at the gathering? This is a great conversation to have on the way home. You can start having this conversation in your church group time, like Leah said, but on your way home and once you get back, what do we want to do differently now? What things impacted us enough that we want to change how we do something, how we want to function as youth, or what things we want to do. How does this gospel message motivate our lives, and how can we act on that? Have that conversation with your kids. Plant the seed to serve as a 2019 Young Adult Volunteer with Orange Nation. That's a great time. Some of our kids will be like, oh, this is the last time we'll be able to go to National Youth Gathering. And I tell each and every one of them, no, it is not. This is not your last chance to go to National Youth Gathering. You can go to them for the rest of your life. And when they're in college, they can go as part of Orange Nation, Young Adult Volunteer. And I tell each of them, and when you're older, too old for that, come back as an adult leader. We want you to lead the youth that are of the next generation once you're older. So for your kids that are like, last time at the gathering, nope, tell them it's not. Use your gathering Bible. This time we have a fantastic study Bible that we're going to have in our backpack. This isn't your average, not small Bible. This one's going to be large and in charge. So use this gathering Bible when you get back home for youth group stuff. It will be great. So use it. The last one I have in here is use your travel time. Especially if so I know some of you hate those long rides. We have about a 20-hour drive in a coach bus from Rochester, Minnesota down to New Orleans. Learn to love that time because it is fantastic time to spend with your youth on the way down and the way back. It is some of the best conversations I've had with my youth are at 1 or 2 in the morning traveling somewhere. Last summer we went out a couple summers ago out to Idaho for Idaho Servant Adventures, and we took the train out there, which is about a 36-hour ride, and it was fantastic time to sit and talk with our youth for the whole train ride out there. You have their captive attention because they're not going anywhere when they're on a bus, when they're on a train, when they're in the car. So utilize that time. I always tell my adult leaders when we're riding the bus down, do not sit in the 2 front rows of the bus and let all the kids sit in the rest of the seats. Go in the back, go in the middle, go wherever, sit in and amongst them because you can have real conversations with them. And it's some of the deepest, best conversations I've had with any of my youth have been on bus trips, train rides, and at 1 in the morning because we have their captive attention. So use that time and learn to love that time, especially on the way back. After they've taken in all this information, taken in all these experiences, there's a lot to debrief. There's a lot to talk about, and they will be an open, I'm going to say all of them, but a lot of them are going to be an open book. They're going to want to talk through. They're going to want to process stuff that went on there. So be there for it and be ready for that, to take that opportunity to mentor them, to minister to them, because it's a really valuable time. Your congregation. Have the congregation pray for you the week you're gone. I do this every time we leave for a trip, is in our prayers of the church, include whichever group is gone for that week. If it's a mission trip, National Youth Gathering, a retreat, we have our congregation pray for that group. So while we're away, they're remembering us in their prayers. They're spending time thinking about us and praying for us. Once you get back, here's a couple ideas. You don't have to do all of them again. The kind of the standard one, doing a presentation at the end of the worship service, can be a good way to give a quick highlight of what happened. What I've moved to doing at our church is taking our full Bible study hour. We have an early and late service, and so the hour in between, I hijack the adult Bible study hour down in our fellowship hall, and we use the whole hour for giving a recap of our trip and having the kids talk about their experiences. I always have them say usually one thing they learned, one thing they experienced, and one thing that they loved doing there. That's kind of my prompt for them, so they have something ready to say when I stick a microphone in front of them. But it's a great chance to share with your congregation and to make them part of what went on. They're integral in supporting us, so they get the privilege of being able to hear what happened on the trip, what they learned, what they experienced. So we take a whole hour during Bible study to do that instead of a 5-minute spiel at the end of our church service. Lead a church Bible study on the gathering theme. Your youth and you will hopefully be pros at Philippians by the end of the gathering. We'll have taken a lot of information from the morning Bible studies, from mass events. So it's a great chance to take that back home to your congregation. Again, you can do it during adult Bible study hour, do a separate one, and do a 3 or 4 week study on Philippians with some members of your congregation and teach them and have your youth teach them what they learned. It can be a really neat thing to have youth teaching adults in the church, and they will have just heard a lot of Bible study material, a lot of stuff on Philippians. They can take that back and share that with their congregation. Integrate into a worship service is another great possibility that you can use. So you can have your kids read from Philippians, have your pastor preach on some of the Philippians text, and use some of this in a worship service, again, to show your congregation what we talked about, what we learned at the gathering. This is another great one. Provide snacks during your donut and coffee hour, fellowship hour. If you have someone so inclined just to make beignets, that would be a great idea. I'm gonna have to find somebody at our church that will do that. That'd be a great way to bring the gathering back home to your congregation. And I also remember to say thank you. You cannot thank your congregation enough because everyone knows it is a costly thing to go to the youth gathering, between your transportation, your hotel costs, and registration. So it's an extra thank you to the congregation for supporting you in coming to the gathering and showing them that it was an amazing experience. Here's what we learned, and it was so worth it. So remember definitely to give a big thank you to your congregation. Last thing Leah and I want to share with you is the best tool you can possibly use for bringing the gathering back home. The best tool both of us 100% agree on is relationships. The relationships you make before the gathering, through the events you do while you're at the gathering, and the relationships that you carry back and that you make post-gathering are the things that are going to last the longest. And so that's what we wanted to just emphasize to you. Through all of these things, the focus needs to be on the relationships that are being created. That's what will bring the gathering home. That's what will make it carry over through the next year. And Lee, I don't know if you had anything else to add in with the best tool being relationships.
No, I think that's perfect. You got it. That's kind of the little, I say it's like the little blankie. You know, when you have little babies have blankies that they take with them someplace to feel safe. Their relationships are what they bring back with them from the gathering to kind of help them kind of carry it through. So keep working on those relationships, family ones, amongst adult leaders, amongst your youth, and let that bring it home.
Mark and Leah, thank you. A lot of really good information here to process, and I think you did a great job explaining things, but want to spend some time now. If you do have questions for Mark or Leah, maybe they said something that you would appreciate hearing a little bit more about in more detail, please use the chat box as people have been doing throughout the presentation, and we will facilitate the questions there. One question that I have is going into more of what does it look like to practice grace and forgiveness, and if maybe you could give some ideas or some tangible ways to go about doing that when you get back with your youth group. What does it look like to practice grace and forgiveness?
Yeah, so I don't know about the rest of you, but I've had a lot of experience where you've got, let's say 2 girls, as an example, on your youth group, on the mission trip or whatever, who are, kind of at each other. Maybe it's a boy, maybe they just don't like each other, or they never got along. And so to take the opportunity as the leader to say to them, all right, here's the deal. You don't always like each other. You guys don't always get along, and right now there's something going on, but we got to talk about it because we are a part of the body of Christ together. Like, we've been called to love each other. There's 2 ladies, actually, that get called out by Paul in the book of Philippians because they're not getting along. They're fighting. I mean, they're in Scripture for all of the rest of time. Eudia and Cynthia, I think it's how you say her name. I don't know. But anyways, 2 girls that are struggling. And so Amy, along those lines, I guess what I would say is I would challenge you as the adult leader when you see those things in your group, especially after we've had the community night and they've seen some of that play out for them on stage and in video, that you'd say, okay, I get that this is going on, and instead of ignoring it, say, let's talk about it. And how could it change things? Not that you're going to become best friends, because, we aren't going to be best friends with everybody in our youth group. It's not going to happen. But we can learn to love each other. And there's going to be a moment in that event we're really going to ask kids to think about what forgiveness means, what it means to let something go and to love somebody. And so I guess that's kind of what I'd say, Amy, is to have those conversations. You're going to have to help walk them through that. They're not going to – some kids will be great and be able to do it on their own, but to push that. And so then when you're back home after the 5 days of the gathering and things aren't going great, have the conversation in the group. Say, I feel like we're all at each other or something's not right. Talk to them about what it means to be a community that loves each other. So I guess that's what I'd say to that.
Awesome. Thank you. Otherwise, there's been a lot of people just saying thanks for the advice and tips, and I would agree. Thank you guys so much for taking the time, for being with us here today to share that, and for your ongoing work with the gathering and with your youth and your local congregations. We do have a question here just about registration information, hotel information updates. The goal is to have hotel information sent out by the end of the day tomorrow for all congregations who turn in their information by the end of 2015. So if you submitted your information before the end of the year, our hope is to have that all out to you tomorrow. So the registration office is hard at work figuring out, it's kind of like a big jigsaw puzzle of how to put everyone in their right place. And so we're getting the details together for that, and appreciate your patience with that. And I think that's the biggest update. Of course, you can still continue to register for the gathering. It remains open until May 4th. You can also make substitutions or cancellations through that time as well. And the registration office is here to help you with that process. To contact them, email them, nygregistration@lcms.org. A couple other things that I wanted to make you guys aware of as we think about resourcing beyond the gathering, what else is coming up, are just some ongoing resources that are available through the gathering. First of all, the Gathering app, which we're very excited and working on right now to get rolling. We hope to have that available for you in May, and we will have a year to use that. So following the gathering, for the next 30 days, we're working with Concordia Publishing House to put out a devotional every day. So that'll be a great bridge kind of between, end of the summer back to the school year and maybe your more normal routine in Sunday school and church routine, to have a devotion that's sent straight to everyone's phone, everyone who has the app. So that's one way to continue to be resourcing and have things related to the gathering themes. Also continue to connect with the gathering website. That'll be a place where the devotionals are also put. That's also where you'll be able to find recordings of the Mass event speakers, and we're hoping to also have audio files like podcasts for the morning Bible study speakers. There will also be post-gathering Bible studies too. Continuing to be connected through social media, as many of you are. If you aren't connected yet as adult leaders, the Facebook group is an awesome place to get answers, ask questions, be supported by other adult leaders, and the other platforms are there to connect to. For just ongoing youth ministry resources in general, we are really thankful for the Youth eSource that has Bible studies and devotionals and games and skits and tips and advice on all kinds of different topics related to youth ministry that's available for you. And the Gathering Bible, there are some extra resources in the back of the Gathering Bible about witnessing from the Office of National Mission Witness and Outreach, as well as there's actually an action plan in there that you could walk through with your youth. So as you're driving home, flying home, training home, as you say, what are we going to do differently? There's an action plan in the back where you can actually write out your goals and provide yourself a little bit of accountability for scheduling things like daily time that you're going to read your Bible, or prayer partners or accountability partners who you can talk to about things like that, how you can get connected to a congregation if you aren't. So that'll be another resource that will be made available in the Lutheran Study Bible for you. The Gathering app is not available now. Thanks for checking that. We hope to have it up in May, and certainly there will be a lot of announcements about that once that time comes. So hold on to your seat for now, but hopefully in the near future. A couple other resources to let you know about. The Gathering Guidebook will have an on-site Bible studies, so things that you can use with your group each morning or end of the day, whenever you want to do. They talked about having that community group time to process things with your group. We'll have Bible studies in the guidebook that will help you facilitate those conversations, as well as then a study you can do on the way home, which is another time to ask those questions. Well, what did you learn, and what do we want to do differently? How do we want to be together? And then finally, as you think about, many of your students will be getting ready for college, and so to connect them to things like LCMS Youth, finding a Lutheran campus ministry on their campus or nearby congregation. And you can also encourage them to get connected to Lutheran Young Adult Corps, which is a new initiative that is getting up and going and will be in full swing summer 2017, that allows for an extended service period for 3 months to 10 months for young adults. All this can also be found on the youth ministry website, lcms.org/youth, for more information as you encourage people who are transitioning to becoming a young adult for how they can continue to grow in their faith. Okay, I don't see any further questions, but I do have more information to tell you about. All right. We also have some conferences and events coming up, lots of things to have on your calendar here. LCMS Youth Conference, the next one is in January 2016. It's going to be in D.C. Sorry, that's going to be 2017, not this year, but the following year. And there'll be a connection to life issues, I believe. It's going to be awesome. You should check their website out. It's going to be great. Also, Life Conference will be next year in January 2017 in D.C. And it's really neat. There's a lot of Concordias that actually send groups down that are a huge part of the march. And that's another thing to connect to looking forward. Lutheran Youth Fellowship Team Leadership Training will be in March 2017, another leadership training opportunity for your high schoolers. Servant events are ongoing always. And then we're also looking to have a conference combined with LCMS School Ministry in summer 2017 to have a focus on children and youth ministry, so partnering with them for that. So lots of things going on. Even, I guess, maybe a broader statement is youth ministry is not just the gathering, but certainly there are other ways to be supported in your ministry and care for youth in your local congregations. Thank you for sticking with me through all of that. With that, I said we'll go ahead and end for today. Again, thank you, Mark and Leah, for all the information, and we'll look forward to being with you guys again in just about a month for our next gathering webinar. So for now, thank you, and have a great rest of your day.